If your engine fails in flight, you've already learned how to try to get the engine started again. Now let's consider the possibility that the engine does not restart and you must land away from an airport. And at this point, you'd be glad that you found a landing spot, as we discussed earlier. Now let's talk about the landing. Remember, you should land into the wind if possible, because if the only open area does not allow you to land into the wind, be aware that a wind of 10 to 20 knots means that your ground speed will be increased from 20 to 40 knots when landing downwind versus into the wind. So if you land downwind, your approach to the area will be faster than you're used to, and also your ground roll will be increased. And those are both safety factors. Now, once you've picked a landing site, you should not change your mind. Unless, of course, you discover that it will be unsafe to land there, but only if you discover this very early in the approach. It is better to land an airplane under control in a less than ideal spot than to go out of control trying to get a better landing spot. And if you have time, you should review the checklist for an emergency landing. As you're doing this checklist, you must remember your first priority is to fly the airplane. Now, let's talk about the items on the checklist. The passenger seat backs should be in their most upright position. This is the best position to survive an accident, and it also allows the rear passengers an easier access to the door. Seats and seat belts should be secure. That's to keep everyone in their seats. The airspeed should be 65 knots indicated airspeed with the flaps up. This will get you the best glide, and of course, you want to concentrate on flying the proper attitude to get this speed. And if you trim the aircraft, that will help because it will free you up to do other important items on the checklist. 60 knots indicated airspeed with the flaps down. You should only put the flaps down when you're sure you will be able to make it to your landing area with them down. And once you lower the flaps, you should slow to 60 knots indicated. Mixture should be set at idle cutoff. Why? Well, this shuts off the fuel flow to the engine and helps prevent a fire. The fuel shutoff valve should also be off. And again, to prevent a fire. The ignition switch, that should be off to remove electrical energy to the engine and help remove ignition sources that might also cause a fire. Those wing flaps, as required, we said before, but 30 degrees are recommended because you want to be at your slowest airspeed when you land. Makes it easier to control the landing for you. Master switch, off when the landing is assured. Now this is to remove any remaining electrical energy from the airplane and the remaining sources of ignition for a fire again. And remember that once you do this, you will not have electrical power to change your flap position. That's an important note. The door should be unlatched prior to touchdown. And this is so you're not trapped in the airplane. What you can do is jam something into the door like a sweater or a cushion because you know what's going to happen. Otherwise, this will be the only time in your entire life that a door ajar would close on its own. At touchdown, you should be slightly tail low. You don't want the nose wheel to dig into a soft surface or hit any rocks. You want to keep that nose up and the plane upright. The brakes, apply heavily. This is like the sign in my dressing room when I come into the studio, makeup, apply heavily. Or as needed to stop before hitting the trees or other obstruction at the end of the field. Obviously, you don't want to be reading this checklist while you're touching down. So do those checklist items that you can while you're at altitude, such as the first 6 items through turning off the ignition switch. Then review the rest of the checklist items if there's enough time. Then either put it away and do the rest of the items from memory or have a passenger read it to you. And remember, at all times, fly the airplane. Another thing you should consider before turning off the master switch is to let someone know that you're having a problem and where you're going to land. This will be very helpful in your being rescued quickly. And the best way to do this is to talk to someone on the ground or even another airplane. But if you can't talk to a controller, you should put the emergency code 7700 in your transponder. This will allow rescue crews to get a better idea of your position. Now, you need to have a plan for after landing. First, have a plan for getting out of the airplane and brief the passengers on that plan. And second, discuss where you will meet once you are out, so that everyone will know where everyone else is once you get out of the airplane. But in any case, leave expeditiously. You've just created a potential fire hazard, so please get away from it. If you flip upside down, brace yourself with one hand on the overhead before you unlatch your safety belt. You're going to fall a little ways. Remember gravity. Exits other than the main doors can be used, such as the baggage door, or kick out the windows. And this is why I always wear shoes while I'm flying. And just so you know, tow bars work nicely on windows also. And move away from the aircraft, especially if there's a fire hazard. As in any emergency, thinking it through before it happens eases the stress if it does happen.